Hello lovelies, I'm Julia Williams from Open Door Thinking, and I wanted to share with you some learning I had recently on how we as humans deal with unwelcome change situations. It's called the Kubler-Ross model, and it's not new. It was first devised by a Swiss-American psychiatrist called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969 and had 5 stages. It has since then been tweaked and tinkered with and has morphed into different formats, and it was originally devised for explaining the emotions gone through after grief, but grief is another change and therefore it's applicable to changes in general. I think it is a really useful model for examining how feelings are working, especially at the moment. And certainly since I learned about this model, I can look back and see how I have processed the changes that I went through last year, including a bereavement, my feelings during lockdown, more specifically when we came out of lockdown. But it also has highlighted for me slightly less universal changes, such as we're at the end of an academic year, children are transitioning from one class to another, from one phase to another, from maybe school to university. Parents are dealing with these transitions, staff are dealing with these transitions. None of it is easy, and this has really been useful, and so I felt compelled to share it with you in the hope that it might help someone else. So here we go. So I've got here 2 axes, one that shows time along the bottom, although we need to be a bit careful with this one because these emotions aren't necessarily linear in time. They can loop back, they can go in different orders. So the time is to be taken a little bit with a pinch of salt, but useful nevertheless. And then up the side we have our energy, our morale, our productivity, our motivation, our self-esteem. It's all tied up in how we go through this emotional roller coaster, if you like. So when we meet for the first time with a change that's coming, we may feel a sense that of unreality, if that's a word, that this change, it's not happening to me. We don't want it to, and it's unwelcome and it's uncomfortable, and that may be shock. Certainly if I look back to when everything shut down back in March, the world seemed to be in shock that this could happen. We process it differently, it shows on the outside differently, but shock is at its core, and it is closely followed by denial. This isn't happening. If I don't watch the news, it's not happening. If I just put off thinking about it for a while, it's not happening. I'm not dealing well with this. And we saw during lockdown a lot of people going through this, and even at the moment with transitions in school, children might process the changes. It's not happening right up until the last day. They just don't want to know, and then gradually as time goes on, this shock, this denial turns to a heated emotion where we start to resist the change much more vocally, and it can turn into anger. And certainly during lockdown, there was anger towards the way people might not respect the space that was required. There was anger when we came out of it at people who wanted to get together in large groups on the beaches and then at pubs, anger that they were putting others in danger. With the school transition, it's anger maybe that your child hasn't been able to finish the school year in the way that you had always planned, and anger that your movement through this period is different to how it normally is. There is a lot of resentment that this is being imposed upon us, and the anger can shoot out in all different directions. It's not always at the person causing the problem or the thing, because sometimes there is no one source, so it can burst out in all different directions. During lockdown, people rowed with husbands, wives, kids, because there was all this anger and nowhere to actually channel it to. And if a change is imposed upon you, there may not be anywhere to direct it. People get angry at God when there is a terminal illness they've got to deal with, or a bereavement. All over the place, this anger can burst out and be very destructive. And then as that starts to kind of calm a little bit, there's this bargaining. Now I have a little trouble with this bargaining because it's not a phase I recognise in myself. However, I am aware of it, and certainly in small children, I'm sure we all are. I will go to bed if I get to watch this, or if I'm good, can I stay up for a bit longer? Or we're all aware of what bargaining looks like with children and young people. With an illness, it might be that if I get through this, I will change my lifestyle. With a change of job situation, it might be, well, okay, I will, if I embrace this change, can I keep or can this stay the same? Or if I do this, do I get time off in lieu? Or this kind of trying to almost find a way round what is happening, this imposed change. And then sadness or depression often follows. And it doesn't have to be big dramatic depression or big dramatic sadness and tears flying everywhere, although it can be. It can be a sad feeling of loss that's deep inside. Certainly during lockdown, I know that a lot of people were saying that they had days where they just cried. And they didn't know why they were crying. They didn't have a real identifiable reason. They just wanted to cry. And it was a kind of a grief for a life that they'd lost, especially for those who were shielding. They couldn't do anything, and they didn't know when it was going to end, and that was really sad. For children transitioning through school, it's a sadness of your babies growing up, or for your young person, it might be that they're losing friends or leaving the school behind, or there is this sadness. It might be that you're being moved from one project onto another, and you're sad because you spent so long at it, and you really wanted to see that through. Or you might be leaving work colleagues, or many different reasons for the sadnesses. And I say, it doesn't have to be depression, it doesn't have to be a great pit of despair, but it's down at the bottom there, because that's often the lowest point, and it's often the point where we start to begin to move on. It's quite cathartic, and so we begin to think, well, okay, this change is going to happen. Is there anything I can do? It's different from the bargaining. It's more productive. It's more useful. You begin to think maybe different ideas of how this is going to work. What can you do with it to make it a positive experience? So, for example, in lockdown, it might be, well, okay, I'm going to use this time to learn how to paint, or I'm going to deal with all the projects in the garden that I haven't done because I never have time, or I'm going to learn to meditate. We were productive. We found things to do. Maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. As we come out of it, it's like, well, okay, perhaps this is good now because I can finally go to the hairdressers, or I can finally go and meet my friends, and if I wear a mask, I will be able to do something else. With the transition, it's okay, the kids are moving on, they are going to move, there's not a lot we can do about it. How can we make this as smooth as possible? What could we do? And for a work environment, it might be you start to wonder how things will work and how you could make the best of things. You start to look at the positive. And gradually through this more positive outlook comes acceptance. You begin to allow yourself to see yourself in the new situation. It's going to happen. There's nothing I can do about it. When we were in lockdown, it was like, okay, this is the way the world is for now. You get used to doing your daily walks. You get used to being at home, and you begin to think, well, okay, this is the way it is. So there's no point getting in a tizzy. I'm going to have to deal with it. No, the kids aren't going to go back to school. Yes, they are going to have to move on without, but this is the way it'll be. We're going to get through it. Yes, I'm going to have to move offices. Yes, I've got to have different work colleagues. Yeah, I've got to change project. All this kind of, yeah, okay. This is what it is, and I'm going to have to deal with it. And with that comes the acknowledgement that, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. It'll be okay. I'm gonna get through this like I've got through everything else, and it will be what it will be. And the stage that I've added on at the very end is that if we manage our emotions well enough through this growing stage, as we come out into acceptance and moving forward, is feeling empowered. The feeling that you have managed it, you have got it, you have survived, and actually realizing that although this experience was painful and although the emotions were unpleasant, you've been through a cycle, and you know that it is a cycle, and yeah, you're going to go through it again, but actually, you know what, you're going to come through it again too. So, as I said, it's very important to realise this is not as linear as it looks, mainly because I couldn't make it look so messy and complicated as human beings are with my limited PowerPoint skills. But it's important to recognise that, yeah, you might get through the anger stage, and you might feel you're coming out of it into maybe sadness, and you've been bawling for days, but actually you're starting to feel really angry about it again, and that's okay. You can go back and be angry until you have sorted through the anger, and that it's okay to slip back into feeling sad as the deadline for the change happens. You might find out a couple of months in advance that these changes are happening, and you might be fine. And then as you come up to the actual deadline, you've been through it all, you've got to acceptance, and then there it is on the day, and suddenly you feel overwhelmingly sad again. That's perfectly normal. It's absolutely fine. I know there are plenty of parents that on the last day of term will feel incredibly sad because they haven't been able to do what they wanted to do for their children, and the schools haven't done what they hoped they would do, and the staff feel bad, and the children feel bad, and the parents feel bad, even though they thought they'd come to terms with it. But today is a sad day, and then they will move forward again. It might be the diagnosis you've had, and you've come to terms with it, and you've got to go for surgery, and you were fine, you'd accepted it, but the day you go in for it is another day that you feel terrible and you feel sad. The important thing to realise is that will pass. And I found this model so helpful because I was able to go, oh, okay. So when I absolutely lost it over the fact that there were all these people on the beaches and I was getting really ranty, if you look back through my posts, that was me processing my anger at this change of having to come out into this world and not feeling safe. And that was okay. It was a stage. Of course, it is possible to get stuck in stages. And it is possible, especially in the sadness and the depression stage, for you to be there for a while. And sometimes you need to get help to get out of this. But these emotions are transient. However long they take to be transient, you will go through. And I just thought this was such a useful model for now. It really did help to kind of view it and think, oh, okay. And to think about how one might move oneself from one stage to another. And I just had to share it. It's taken me quite some time to put this together to share it. And I hope it's useful and I hope it's not too garbled. And if you want to know some more about it, or if you want to talk through where you are, then please get in touch. And we can work through it, identifying where you are and how you might move forward from one to another. So thank you if you stuck with me this long through my little rambling PowerPoint, and I hope it's been useful. Bye.